Langford, and we're working on the audio and hope to get that finished really quickly. David Langford started his work in implementing Dr. Deming's thinking 20, it feels like more than 25 years.
Okay.
Maybe 25 to 30 years ago.
Could you turn on your lavalier, please?
It's on. It is on.
So when David started his work, the results were dramatic. Students realized that schools exist to foster lifelong learning and happiness. And since the time that David started, he's built up Langford International. David integrated continual improvement and redesigned methods and concepts into student learning, school leadership, promoting partnerships between corporate and education worlds. And with over 35,000 educators from around the world attending David's seminars, they're continuing to use this training as the basis for 21st century learning. If that's just for me, that's okay, I'm done. So anyway, it's a real great pleasure. I've known David for a while. He's a super guy. He joined us for a pre-conference for 2 days. We had some wonderful insights come out of that, and I want to welcome David Langford.
Awesome. Glad to be here. So, fellow Demingites, and following this philosophy, that's what you're doing. But I actually prefer the term demolitions. So, because that's what you're really about. If you go back and start applying these things in your organizations, you're going to be in the demolition business. You're going to blow up the system, so to speak, in a different way. So my task this morning is to kind of give you an overview about innovation in education, and I'm going to take you on a trip around the world, some different places, not just here, because innovation just in education doesn't just happen in America. In fact, some of the most innovative places I've found are different places in the world. If you want to start improving education, one of the first things we can start doing is just stop doing everything you're being told to do right now. What's coming from state departments, what's coming from the federal government is exactly the opposite of what Deming talked about, and leads to disaster. I was telling people in the 2-day conference that I just spent the first 2 days of this week in a school district where basically the teachers had PTSD. They were under such stress, and they couldn't think, they couldn't do anything. There were so many pressures coming from the State Department, the federal government, et cetera. So, how do you begin, under a system like that? So the current system is set up on memorization of fact as a measurement. And so we heard Kelly talk this morning about you have to have an aim for the system. So I thought I'd start with a little bit about brain research. This is my good friend J.W. Wilson, basically just talking about what happens when you have memorization as the aim of a system.
So your question is, what is the detrimental effect of a system that drives the brain to think success is memorization of facts? It's great. Here's what's happening. The area that the school system focuses on is really the left temporal lobe. It's where finite math for most people is, and language are. And again, I'm being metaphorical. It's much more complex than this, but in general. So the research, or the experts say, because when I say the research shows in this particular area, it's kind of the consensus of experts that study kind of these biological intelligences. Howard Gardner kind of started it with the 7 intelligences, and since then, at Duke University and a lot of other places, people have studied, okay, what does it really mean? How many intelligences do we have? That kind of thing. What we've looked at the Institute is we've broken it down to about 11 biological intelligences. Your spatial dominant, which is right parietal lobe, which really fits into our society at the moment. We talked about Jobs, Wozniak, Dell, Gates, Allen, Ted Turner, those guys. They tend to be right parietal lobe dominant, where they can put systems together and put them, everything on a computer chip. Then you have social dominance, you have musical dominance, those kind of dominances. But what we've done is we've built an educational system that primary fires only the left temporal lobe, where finite math and linguistics is. Let's imagine that you're born with an overabundance of neurons in your left temporal lobe. And what we do is we have these 11 biological dominances, and they're represented by an overabundance of neurons and neural material, dendrital branching, in different parts of your brain. When we do a brain scan of someone, we can recognize that no two brains on the face of the earth are exactly the same. Each one is unique. No two neurons connect up in any brain in the same way. We all think differently. Why? Because really we're a species of 7 billion forms of unique intelligences, which are basically adaptation fuel to our species. The more people we have thinking different thoughts, the more opportunity we have to fit changing environments. So it's vitally important that each of us continue to work off of our gift. Our gift is that overabundance of neurons in one of those 11 areas that hooks up with the other 11 differently than anybody else's. That's why each one of us is an expert in something our neighbor isn't. And when I first learned this kind of information, I was fascinated. I'd go into 7-Eleven and I'd start asking people questions, or gas stations, and I'd go, well, what do you like to do? And somebody would invariably tell me that, I love baseball. I'd go, well, how do you love baseball? And that person had memorized every batting average of every player in the American League, and he'd done it without any work at all. I never could do that, right? So everybody has this genius. And when you recognize that, what you recognize is that they've got, from a biological standpoint, he has an overabundance of neurons that he's born with, and a genetic predisposition to select in information in an arena that somebody else doesn't. So, but here's what happens. You take a mouse, a man, or an amoeba, and you lock it in a small box, and you only give it information to one part of its brain year after year after year after year. Do you think you end up with a healthy organism? No, it really would seem that you may damage the organism. How? Well, let's step back 1 second. When those neurological structures are activated that are your genius, it's really a base of what we call the meaning network comes from there. That helps you access what's meaningful to you. Like people that are nurses, in their kind of compassion area, they have an overabundance of neurons. As I said, kind of engineers the right parietal lobe, teachers the left temporal lobe. So when you're accessing that area, you get joy. Dopamine, serotonin, norepinephrine increase. Your life becomes more joyful, happier, and you select in more data because you need those neurotransmitters to help select in the data. Now, what happens when I take somebody who's not primary left temporal lobe, which really the school system is built on left temporal lobe, finite math and language. I drop them into the school system. You're getting 20 watts of power through your carotid and vertebral arteries. That's naturally going to your gift. So when you're a child and you're playing in preschool, right, or in your neighborhood or whatever before you enter kindergarten, you're just doing what you want to do. You're eating dirt, you're playing music, you're beating on pots and pans. You're naturally going to what your primary intelligence is driving you to do. And you're getting dramatic meaning from it. You're self-satiating your meaning network. Now I take that organism, that child, out of that self-directed, self-satiating environment, and I drop them into an environment in which the only way they can survive is to shut down what's meaningful to them, unless they're left temporal lobe. And what I do is they have to shut that down and redirect the blood flow to their left temporal lobe to survive. Now, what does that mean to the 20 watts of power from the carotid and vertebral arteries that were going to your gift? Now I'm redirecting it to where you have to spend your energies to get an A in class or to pass or to get out. So what do you think happens to that area of yours that's your gift, that when it's accessed, allows you to feel joy, happiness, and excitement about being alive? It's what lets you feel alive. Well, what happens is it begins to shrink. It's not getting the neural energy, the glucose and oxygen it needs, and what it was designed to do, grow. So what we end up with is really literally millions of people that exit the educational system with their primary genius atrophy and their primary neural structures, which allow them to self-satiate with joy by doing meaningful things. They graduate from school and they go, well, little Johnny, you've spent 15,000 hours in your classroom and so many more thousand hours studying, and you've memorized all this stuff. What do you want to be? He goes, I don't know. What's meaningful to you? Video games, and girls, right? So really what we've done is we don't recognize it, but when you look at our educational system through the eyes of biology, what we're doing is we're causing the very structures that we need to satiate and find meaning in our life. We're atrophying those structures. You can't lock somebody in a box for 18 years and not let them self-stimulate what's meaningful to them. Because when they get out, they don't know what's meaningful to them. So what do they do instead? Well, there's drugs, sex, alcohol. You switch to those things, even codependency. Because what you can do is you can falsely stimulate that circuit of the meaning network by doing things that jumpstart the meaning network. So then what happens? Excess food, sex, drugs, alcohol, those kind of things become meaningful because I don't know how to self-satiate. So in a way, the system itself, this is what the research is leading us to believe, is that the system itself is driving us to become an addictive society.
Scary stuff, huh? J.W. Wilson. So he has a website called Cracking the Learning Code. So we get down to the root chord. So when I started this process and encountered Deming, started the idea about what is the product of education. And so we all started with all the product of education is students and things like that. And then as we got better at understanding systems and really getting deeper with it, began to realize the product of education is the learning itself. If you treat students as if they're products in a system, and they'll just do things to them. They're inanimate objects that we just do things to them and we make things up. But if learning is the product, then students become willing workers within the system, and their job is to help you improve the learning system as well as everybody else within the system. And that's a dramatic shift in the system. Now, one of the worst things you can do with all this understanding and everything you gain is to try to improve something that should be eliminated. Obsolete. And if you go about applying improvement theory to those kinds of things, pretty soon you just become very efficient at something that should be eliminated. We see this in grading systems. Then railed against grading systems, but now we have very expensive programs that monitor all the grades, and you can grade people to 1/1000th of a point, and you can do very efficient bad things with that. So it's only management that breaks out of the system. That students are caught in that system, and even if they recognize the evils of the grading system, they're caught in that. They can't do anything about that. So teachers can limit the effects of the grading system. It all depends on the largest system you want to start with. Okay? And wherever you start, I always tell teachers, you are management. So you start with your system, the largest system over which you have influence. I used to always teach my kids, you are management. You are managing your system. So do you have any special causes going on in your life and things, or is your life starting in control? Or are you just totally out of control? And we do lots of things to teach kids to, like we saw this morning with Kelly Allen, to track their own performance and to see, how you doing, what's going on with that, and are you learning anything? Then take the classroom data and say, gee, is the same thing happening as a classroom? Am I optimizing the classroom performance? Okay. So if we're going to not work on things that should be eliminated, I want you to just take 30 seconds or so, turn to somebody at your table, identify for me what's obsolete in education. What would you say are the obsolete structures, concepts? Go. See if you can come up with a short list. Okay, so it's actually an all-day experience. So tell me some things. Somebody tell me what's obsolete in the current system of education. Something.
Teacher, student,
Teacher, fill in the blank
teacher
worksheet.
of the month, no.
Oh, teacher of the month, student of the month. Okay, so something else. Standardized tests. Something else. You have to grade on the curve. Something else. Looking for right answers. Something else. Textbooks. Something else. Public humiliation.
Competition and not teaching people interdependence.
Competition, not teaching people interdependence.
Rewarding every single little behavior with a sticker you can put on your phone.
Rewarding every little behavior, stickers. Yes, sir.
Teachers grading papers on their own time.
Yes. How about the common structure of things? Anything can come up with that? Like a physical structure or process structure.
Classroom structure.
Classroom structure, 900 square feet equals a classroom. Here's the lake 3. Jiffy Lube mentality in now. Yes.
An emphasis on delivering instruction rather than learning.
Yes. Delivering instruction instead of learning.
Sitting for long hours staring into space.
Sitting for long hours in space. Yes. Taking away creativity. 7 class period day.
There's a huge emphasis on getting a certification of something.
Getting a certification of something. What's that? Closed-ended questions where the answer is already predetermined. Memorizing. So we all know these things, right? We all know these things. But why do we keep doing it? Yeah, it's part of the system we grew up in. Teachers go to college and they learn to perpetuate the system. It's very difficult to break out of the system, so to speak. And that's why it's very rare, really, around the world to see education systems that are trying to break out of the system, try to do something significantly different. So one of the phrases Deming often says, you can always stop doing something stupid. And I told that to a group of superintendents last weekend, and right away somebody said, how do you know it's stupid? Pretty good question. But it comes back to the aim of what you're trying to do. So if the aim of the system is to provide meaningful learning, so we just learned about, in everybody's brain, there's a group of meaning cells. Unless you're tapping into that meaning, you're not having learning take place. Okay? And it's to provide experiences for youth in its day. That means they have to be relevant in its day. Currently, what's going on in the system for its future, in order for that to add value to society. So then we talked about. There we go. Then we talked about that an aim has to have some greater good to society. And how powerful is that for students when they begin to think about, wow, I can change the world. I can gain this knowledge and insight, and I can go out and make a significant difference in some area of my personal life, some area of my work life, social life. Okay? I don't need anybody's permission to do that. I can add significant value to the system. So when we start thinking about, wow, if our job is to create these powerful learning experiences, and they have to be meaningful to youth in its day. And I want to show you, what can that look like? And if we start to get rid of some of these structures, no more class periods, people focusing on meaningful experiences, what does that actually look like? So we're going to go to Canada. This is a school I've worked with for almost 15 years in Canada. And they did a lot of things for many years, but about 2 years ago, they just really started ramping up, and they just said, by golly, we're just going to do this. This is a K through 12 school. We're going to stop having these classrooms. We're going to start having integrated projects, long periods of time for people to actually work through things and have projects or learning experiences that actually are meaningful to people and improving society. So here's high school physics.
The project we worked on in grade 12 was a cross-curricular project that we named Pandoras Box. The act of doing a simple task such as opening a box could have great consequences or terrible consequences. And so all the grade 12s together were looking at the concept of what are the potentials of nuclear energy in the future, 10, 20, 30 years from now, when we have a real potential energy crisis on our hands. On every table, they had a box that was all chained up. So they opened the box and there's a glowing stick inside representing a radioactive isotope. And there was a driving question on the inside of the box. Can a single isotope solve world problems? In most cases in grade 12, all the classes, all the subjects are very segregated. In the real world, many, many times, biology is not by itself, chemistry is not by itself. They're always integrated with something else. Politics, geography, all these different subjects can be brought together. So we really tried to take aspects of physics, biology, chemistry, math, the social sciences, bring it together in a project where we can take aspects of the curriculum that they're actually demonstrating through their research and their debates and their presentations. We had all the grade 12s from all the core subjects in groups, researching individual topics with really a specialized aspect to it where they were given roles. The student actually opened up an envelope, and inside the envelope was a letter addressed to them from the United Nations. And each of the students actually had a role that they assumed, such as doctors, senators, physicists, roles that have been customized to each of their interests so that they really feel like this is something personal to them. Generally, someone who was assigned to be a senator was someone who was also tasked with performing the debate. All their roles were actually directly related to the curriculum outcomes that they were being asked to demonstrate. Through the project, they were able to master the skills that they could apply towards going beyond just research and demonstrating a really creative debate and presentation that they were able to perform in front of all the other students and their peers. When we have a project like this where they're experiencing a scenario that's really interesting, their brain is actually working in quite a different way than it normally would in a classroom. First, we had the introductory phase where we actually explained the project, how the day was going to flow, introduced the scenario. The first amount of work that they actually did was the research module, where they were all working individually within their own teams, collecting and researching information so that they could move on to the next module. The second part consisted of two separate things. The first one was the debaters. The debaters would work together to craft their debate arguments, and the second half of students that weren't involved in the debate directly would work within their own group to put together all their information into one big presentation. And once they had all that information together, they could actually collaborate with the debaters to figure out, okay, we have all the information in front of us. What are the pros? What are the cons against nuclear energy or for nuclear energy? The debate really allows students to focus their skills on how to craft a debate argument, how to initiate crossfires, making sure that their statements are concise and clear. So engaging in a project like Pandoras Box is a great way for students to be outside of a normal classroom environment and experience much more joy than they actually normally experience in the classroom. A project like this is really rewarding for the teachers as well as the students. We get to see them experience ownership in a project that prepares them for the future so they're ready for when they leave high school. It's not just about working in a textbook, it's working on something that is beyond the textbook. Watching them leave with that experience, that was really rewarding for me.
So imagine an experience where students move from one meaningful learning experience that's relevant and their lives to the next, to the next, to the next, and even starting to design and think about their own learning experiences. It's a much different way to think about learning versus what we've been doing for the last 2,000 years, primarily lecture and get process. Now, there is a time when clarification is needed, when kids do need insight, but then we talked a lot about it, forging intrinsic motivation, which really means you have to want to do that. And so that's where we forged a methodology called the workshop method. So there's always a workshop board. If you need to know something, okay, you can solicit the teacher to do a workshop on that. Okay? And maybe it might be scheduled during the class time. Maybe it might be nowadays videotape, put on the web. But the teacher's working off of whatever people need to know and understand in the learning experience that they're going through. Much different way to work, think, talk, and act. Claire Crawford Mason's here, and when she made the film Quality or Else, she brought about 8 people, I think it was, to Sitka, Alaska, where I was working, and saw a lot of stuff, saw what was going on, and it wasn't just about becoming more efficient at the process of education. We were fully engaged in creating these very powerful, meaningful experiences in everything we do. So I was a business application teacher when I first met Deming. Can you imagine a more boring subject than that? I mean, you probably lived through accounting and stuff like that. It's just horrible. And the results that we're getting, Kelly was talking about this morning about the experience that you get, the results were actually condoning the current system because they kept on doing, not just me, virtually all the teachers kept on doing what they've been doing all the time. About 10% of the kids would do well, and then there's a bell curve of people all the way down to as many as 30 or 40% of the students were failing. But we thought we were a really tough school. And I run into universities and all kinds of places, we're a really tough school, half of our kids are failing. You're not a tough school, you're just a stupid school. Any moron can come up with a scale to make 50% of the people feel like failures. Okay? A really tough school is one in which virtually nobody's failing, and they're excelling at a very high level. There's no escape. That's a really tough school. If you have questions, you have issues or problems, or you didn't do well on a test, you get a chance to rework that, figure out what you don't know, and come back and fix it. Imagine how intense a school like that would be, that everybody is striving to a very high level. And that's basically what we were doing. We started doing is moving away from grading and ranking people because it wasn't helping. It wasn't useful. So as a business application teacher, I took this thinking and started what's meaningful to people. Well, the most meaningful thing that's meaningful to people is your life, your future. What are you doing? So we started the class out, and I'd have them pick a date 20 years in advance. Describe your life in detail. And the kids are like, I thought this was business applications. Yeah. 20 years in advance. Who are you going to be? Who are you becoming? What's your life going to be like? We bring the English teachers in, and we'd do this up really nice, and a real clear picture of vision of what you said you wanted to be. We had a couple of guidelines. You can't do anything illegal. Okay, you can't be given anything. Like you can't inherit something from your grandfather or something. Okay, and you can't win the lottery. Just some basic things like that. Other than that, you have any life you want. And so kids would say, I have 4 Maseratis, and I live in Hawaii, and 2 houses and a helicopter, and great, that's a great life. It's awesome. I'd love to have that life. And then we'd use some quality tools to work backwards. We had to do PERT charts and Gantt charts and whatever kind of a tool they wanted to use, but you had to say, how'd you get there? What's happened in the last 20 years? What'd you do? What changes did you make? Where'd you go to college? Where'd you meet your spouse? You say you have 4 kids. When were they born? See? Put some reality to this process all the way back to the present. Now they started to have a future. When we asked our high school kids to do a loss function, and we said, if you lived to be an old age, okay, what would that be? the average came out, they said 23 years old. See, they had no vision of your future. Now, we were working with 90% minority students from 17 different ethnic groups, predominantly Alaska Native students. The Alaska Native students, Native American students, at that time, statewide, 1 out of 12 committed suicide by the age of 16. So you can see, in their world, living to 20, if you got to 23, you're already past the life expectancy of basically your peers. You really lived a long time. So we had to do things to give them a positive image of their own future in the process. So then, once you did that, then you could do a balance sheet. What are all your assets? You could use all the things that you need to know, say, but you have to put that in perspective. And then we said your life has to balance. So when you did your income analysis, you can't say you have $4 million in assets, but you want to be a teacher. There's an imbalance there. So your life has to balance, and you simply have to make some choices in life. And choice is very motivating. So you can go back and change your life. That means you have to change your plan and figure something else out. And people say, well, I really want these things. And okay, well, you can start a business. Okay, you start a business. Yeah, I'll start a business. Oh, now you have to do a business plan. Oh, okay. Maybe we need a workshop on how to. Anybody else want to run a business? We'll do a workshop on how to start a business and work through things. So we just keyed off of whatever they brought up is what we went through. You want to know more information about how to do a balance sheet? Okay, we'll have a workshop on that. So anybody would like to come to the workshop. Tomorrow morning at 10:10, we'll have somebody there videotaping you in case you missed it or you just didn't want to come. And it's the funniest thing in the world when you make that shift instead of, I'm going to do it to you and you're going to sit and get it, to come and get it. See? It's totally different. I was telling people in my session the last 2 days, first time, I always loved it the first time I'd do a workshop and scheduled to be at 10:10. And so I'd go up in the corner of the room where we're starting the workshop, because I don't want to interrupt everybody else, and there's nobody there. So I just start the workshop anyway. I'm talking away, and here's what you do, and the kids start looking around, and you hear them say, am I supposed to be there? Did he say to come up? He didn't say to come up there. So, and they start to become meerkats. Then you hear somebody say, well, I'm going. And then I might get 1, 4, or more. But you know what? The next time I did a workshop, I had more. Pretty soon after a couple of weeks, they're sitting up there. Langford, you said it's supposed to be 10:10. It's 10:11. I got things to do if you're not going to follow up on what you're doing. Forging a new level of intrinsic motivation. Amazing. And when you do that, all the behavior problems go down practically to nil. Because most behavior problems are coming from control issues. I'm trying to control you and force you, make you do something that you don't want to do. If I reverse that and start to say, how can I make this so enticing, so interesting, so relevant, so meaningful, you can't wait to come to school every day. In fact, on the way to class, okay, you're anticipating what you're going to do before you get there. See? Whole different mindset starts to emerge. And if you ran a system like that, what do you think would happen to your attendance? Duh. Yeah. Astronomically, it goes up. In fact, we had to actually make rules. You can't come to school when you're sick. Stay home, please. Oh, but I got this project and I don't want to miss it. I want to be a part of that. Now, if that's happening in science, and it's happening in English, and it's happening in history, and not only that, but these things are integrated between things. And you can move from one thing to the next to the next. And maybe you finish up the project you're working in English. No sense in sitting there, waiting till the end of a class period, because the system set up arbitrary time limits. How about you get up and move wherever you need to go and stay well motivated. So you may be way behind in your math project that you're working on, or learning experience. Go there. So when Claire came to visit us, and not only Claire, but thousands of people came to visit, a lot of times they couldn't figure out what was going on. And I always just kind of laughed to myself. So just sit in the classes, just wander around, check things out, and then we'll talk at the end of the day. And people say, what's going on around here? No bells. People are moving where they need to go. Sometimes the class would have 5 people in it. Sometimes it would have 65 people in it. It all depended on need and choice from people. And so test scores went up. We didn't have to concentrate on getting test scores. They went up exponentially because we were concentrating on the core product, which was learning. So I wanted to go back in time and just show you a quick glimpse of what this looked like when I was there. And this is part of the Quality or Else film that Claire came up to film. And here we go. This is an advanced science class.
It must move into a different position this time.
A team of science students built this robot in the hope of making science as interesting as sports. And they did.
So they took on the best 3-point shooters in the school, and we used statistical control mechanisms, and the robot was shooting around 80% of its 3-point shots from anywhere on the court. Well, the best shooters, even NBA shooters, are barely over 40% from the 3-point line. So we created a whole new dynamic. Could sports be as fun, or could science be as fun as sports? And took on that. It developed over years, and pretty soon lots of teams were making shot robots, and then one team decided they're going to make a shot blocking robot. And so the other kids would shoot, and then their arm would go up, and they try to block shots, and it was really great fun. So we were doing STEM back in 1990, encouraging kids to get into these things. But more than that, people would come and visit, and they said, I don't get it. You know, you got teachers, and you got classrooms, and you got some desks and stuff, and the same stuff we got. But what they couldn't see was profound knowledge coming from people. And visitors would come, and they'd see kids doing very interesting things like what we call a capacity matrix, which is how they monitor their own learning and what's going on. It's a self-reflection sheet as they go. And invariably, people would say, they talk to the kids and say, that's really interesting. Can I have a copy of that? Well, after about a couple of years, kids got really cagey. They'd say, yeah, I'll give you a copy, but it won't do you any good. Educators like, what? That's all I've ever done is copy things. What do you mean it won't do me any good? And they say, because you don't understand the theory. Kids would say that, yes. And at the end of the day, I'd meet with people, and they'd often say, these kids are scary. Dr. Myron Tribus was one of the people that was a good mentor, a good friend of Dr. Deming, and he used to fly up and help us, and et cetera. So when he first came up, my kids knew who he was because they'd read his papers and things like that, and so they wanted to chat with him, and they said, okay, I'm going to put you in a room with about 30 of these kids. They want to ask you some questions, and I'll see you in an hour. I came in back in about an hour, and he came out shaking his head. He was kind of white, and I thought, oh no, they tortured him. And I said, what happened? He said, you know what the first question they asked me? And I said, no. First thing they wanted to know is, why do we even need management? He said, I've worked with corporations all over the world. Nobody's ever asked that question. Why do we even need management? You see, if we all understand the aim, what we're doing, we have strategies on how to work together to accomplish the aim, and we support and cooperate. Why do we need somebody that manages? Tell us what to do, and we're tracking our own performance. Fascinating, isn't it? Okay. So we used to take students out around the world, actually, to do explanations of what we were doing. So we asked the kids, try to sum all this up, this whole profound knowledge, theory, and what you're doing and everything. And this is what they came up with.
I think all the schools in the nation should implement this, because if not, we're going to be in serious trouble, because we're just 160 students up here. There's millions of people down there that are all going to have to get in gear if we're going to make it.
It is a good analysis. People everywhere are going to have to get in gear, and the gear is quality. Quality is a new way to think about, organize, and improve what you do. We have shown you successful programs in manufacturing, service, government, hospitals, and even schools. So while we are the first to admit that a quality program is difficult, clearly it is not impossible. Students from Mount Edgecombe High School are often invited to explain the rather difficult concept of quality to other students and to adult industrialists. We were curious how they did it. Do you remember Snow White?
Snow White and the New Management System. Once upon a time, there was a family in a faraway kingdom. The king, Dr. Deming, was a very business-oriented man. He managed his whole kingdom. Dr. Deming was then called upon by the United States to implement his new management system in Japan.
Snow White was then left with her wicked stepmother Waste. Waste knew that if Snow White implemented quality, she would take over and Waste would be eliminated. The Wicked Witch of Waste sent Snow White into the Forest of Opportunity, where she met 4 woodland animals, named Will, Belief, Wherewithal, and Doing. In order to cause a change in any organization, the animal Will explained that people must first want to change. Then Belief chimed in explaining that just wanting to change was not enough. People have to believe that changes can be made. Wherewithal explained that once Will and Belief have worked their magic, it takes statistical analysis and human relations to make the change stick. Then Doing said, once the first 3 have been completed, things just simply need to be done.
Snow White, of course, finds the 7 dwarfs at the 7 Dwarfs Mining Company and begins to improve their lives with a quality program.
Meanwhile, in the ugly castle of Waste, the magic mirror said, Snow White is alive and living in a cottage near a clearing. She is teaching 7 dwarfs how to implement quality in their lives. The angry witch grabbed her magic book. She then turned herself into an old lady and contemplated her revenge.
The old woman offered Snow White a shiny red apple. As soon as Snow White took a bite of the apple, she fell into a deep sleep of status quo, where things can never improve, they can only stay the same.
If you do remember Snow White, you know that she was awakened by a kiss from Prince Charming. The kiss this time comes from the Prince of Commitment.
And because of the prince's commitment and Snow White's quality, together they produced a beautiful daughter and named her Productivity. And the kingdom continually improved forever. However, the moral of the story is, as soon as you reach the point of success, don't get caught biting the apple of status quo. Thank you.
So Einstein said, if you can't explain something simply, you don't understand it yet. So, and so this, Claire, you ruined my life. So as soon as that film came out on PBS, our phone was ringing off the hook, and one of the phone calls I got was Monta Aiken from Leander, Texas, and she'll tell you more about that in the next session. But it made a huge impact and actually caused me to start helping and consulting other districts. So by 1992, and universities too, started doing this work full time, and largely because of Deming. I thought, well, maybe I should go and become a superintendent in another school district, and so I applied for some of those and things, and applied for the ones that said they wanted innovative superintendents ready to change the system, and so I got 3 interviews just right off the bat, and every time I'd go and explain to them what was going to happen within 3 to 5 years, they'd say, whoa, wait a minute. We just want somebody to be more efficient at what we're already doing, kind of thing. So I talked to Dr. Deming and said, why do you want to go make another example? Say, one unexplained example invalidates the old theory. You proved it works. So going and make another example, no number of examples is going to change the theory. And this is what I find today. You'll hear from the folks from Leander, and you'll hear from Doug Stillwell from Iowa. Great things going on. And the question always is, why isn't the neighboring school district doing the same thing? Okay? No learning going on there, no thinking going on. And even if they go and visit, they can't copy because there's innovation happening on a daily basis there. So I want to finish, I want to take you down to Australia do a lot of work in Australia. We have over 1,000 schools that send people to training in Australia, and a lot of really interesting things. But one small school in Melbourne, they had been sending people to training, and they've been doing a lot of great stuff within the containing system. And they got together and they said, we want to blow up the system. We want to become a demolition. And we want to create a whole new way to work, think, talk, and act. And these were all year 7 or 7th grade teachers. And in K through 12, year 7 is usually looked at as, you know, these kids are kind of crazy, you know. Elementaries are glad to get rid of them, and the high school people, they're glad that, you know, it's happening in middle school. And so this is really a trying age with a lot of hormones raging and things going on. They said, can we do this? So we sat and did some planning, and they said, we want to get rid of class periods. We want to have kids own their own learning. We want to have them plan on their own. We have them work together. We want to change the terminology. So they got rid of teacher, student, which implies I'm going to do it to you. And they switched to family guides and having families of students. And here's a brief picture of what they created. Also, they were very fortunate. They had a fire in their building. So they got to apply for some funding. They said, we can build a different building. So their first plan was, they brought me in, what did they plan? Small classrooms, and why are you doing that? Change the structure and you'll change beliefs, or if you have a different belief, different structure, you're going to get different actions coming from people.
We imagined a future where we could walk up to any student in Mordialloc College and ask them about a question about their education. And rather than getting the typical teenage shrug and the stereotypical answer, oh, I don't know, we could engage them in a meaningful discussion about learning experiences that they were having.
Our vision was for an area where students got on well together, they respected everyone, they were tolerant, they were busy, on task, enjoying their learning, and becoming quite fantastic young people.
So basically what we wanted to do was house approximately 170 students into an open learning space where they would be self-directed and supported by a team of teachers.
The Code of Cooperation is an agreement that all the Year 7s have made to make our centre a fun and happy way of learning. We made it by getting into groups and each putting in their ideas and what they would like, and then we all voted on which behaviour we would like, and then that's how we made our Code of Cooperation.
Rather than us telling them how to behave, the students themselves came up with a Code of Cooperation.
It's kind of like rules, but we'd like to call it Code of Cooperation because everyone has made them, so it's not teachers just setting rules, it's us putting them in, so we have to obey them.
There are 7 family groups, and each of those groups has a family guide on one of those family guides.
They don't tell us what we do through the day. We have to do it ourselves and learn ourselves more than anything.
When we bring all of the 150 so kids together, so all of the family groups together, we term that a neighbourhood.
The neighbourhood's like sort of a whole lot of people brought together, and the centre is a pretty big place, so it's like everyone coming together.
This is the flowchart for the Year 7 Centre at Mordialloc College. You can come in the morning if you've forgotten your book for silent reading, so you borrow a book. And then you come in and you have silent reading for half an hour. And then you have a learning centre assembly.
Family time is sort of, in the mornings we plan what we do for the day and we kind of have to stick to that plan.
And we go to expedition time, which is when we can do anything on the capacity matrix, and if it gets too noisy and you want to go outside, you can work outside. If we get lost on what we're doing, we go to the flowchart and look at the times and see what we're supposed to be doing at that time. This is our capacity matrix. It's called Around the World in 14 Days, and it has lots of elements on it. Red is French, Green is English or SOS. Blue is Maths and Science. Purple is Inner Strand, and orange is Personal Strand.
This is the resource matrix for around the world in 14 days, and this is in capacity matrix. If, for instance, I was looking at D4B, demonstrate your detailed knowledge of where French-speaking countries are, and I would look at up on here on the resource matrix, D4B, and it'd say Atlas, and you'd look in the resource box 1.
When you first get your capacity matrix, you pick what elements you want to put into your project, and you do what we call a mind map. You then try to add in as many elements as you can to the project.
Individual students or groups of students may wish to cover a combination of elements completely different from one to the other. So, for example, we've had some groups perform, so actually do a play in front of the whole centre.
You tick off what level you think you're at. So there's, I have heard about this, or I've done work with this, or there's, I can do or describe this with help. So if you think you're in either of those levels, you can tick them off. And there's, I can do or describe this on my own. I can explain and teach this to others. I have used this knowledge. The expected level is I can do or describe this on my own. If you wanted to, you could go higher than that level.
So we have the essential learning elements at the top, and then we decide whether we give a student a 1. Basically what a 1 means is that the student's at a level that's expected.
The aim is to get all of the elements marked off.
So it's a way of us keeping a track of the areas that they're working in, so that we can make sure that they're getting an all-round, so they're learning all areas rather than concentrating on the ones that they enjoy.
Okay. Then there are subheadings. They work through the matrices at their pace with our assistance. Now that student who works a bit quicker than the other one has access then to the next capacity matrices. So that student isn't waiting and wasting time waiting for the next piece of work.
If you don't finish an activity by the time that the capacity matrix is over, you can finish the activities from the previous capacity matrix while you're doing my born identity. So for example, the timeline, if I didn't do that, I could do that while I'm doing my born identity.
A group may be working on a project, and for example they need to find out about how to round off decimal numbers. So what they would need to do, they've got a number of avenues of resources that they can go through. So they may choose the workshop avenue.
This is how you request a workshop. You will get a form like this that says, I need to know more about. You'll put the subject that you want to learn more about. The teacher will take it out and will read it. Then she will put a workshop sign-up sheet. Then whoever also needs help can sign up for a workshop. This is a flowchart of how to attend a workshop. First you check the workshop agenda board. Then you sign your name up to the workshop.
Sometimes we have 5 people in a workshop, sometimes we might have 25, or even sometimes we have the neighbourhood workshop.
After the workshop, you will place any materials given to you at the workshop in your learning folder. Then you write a reflection in your learning folder.
Because the students want to be there are no distractions and students are genuinely interested in what's going on.
In a traditional classroom, students are sometimes under pressure because the teacher expects everyone to be at the same level. So for example, in a French classroom, everyone has to learn verbs at the same time, and if someone doesn't understand it, then the teacher has to explain it all over again while everyone else is listening to the same explanation until everyone gets it. The beauty of the Learning Centre is that students can pace their own learning. They can learn what they need to learn and when.
So, joy in learning. Teachers are happy, students are happy, change the system, amazing stuff happens. You know, one of the battle cries in education is not enough planning time for teachers. All those students went to their specialist classes, art, PE, music, things like that, around 1 o'clock every day. So that team of teachers in the center had a full 2 hours every day to meet as a team, solve problems, work through scenarios. So there was something coming up immediately, was fixed the next day. Or if it was something big, they put the kids into PDSA cycles and have them solve the problem and work through it. And today it's a very magical place. These kids you saw in the film just graduated 2 years ago, and they reported back, they were very, very excited. That group of kids blew the lights out of their state exam. They'd never had kids get as high scores on the senior year 12 exam. It's like our SAT type thing. So we know it works in the long term. So I have to stop because we have to wait for the people that are doing it, Leander, to start. And I always tell people that, you know, if you think this can't happen, can't be done, that's fine, but just stay out of the way of those that are already doing it. Okay? So thanks very much.